What's the haps? I'm Moroka, and today I want to talk about why, if you're an old Spiral Knights player, and I know a good number of my audience is, you should check out Steambirds Alliance. I started playing this with Tulkas at its Steam launch back in August, and one of his first observations was, this game's a bit like Spiral Knights. To his surprise, I found myself inclined to agree. While it's not the same game, it has a lot of common elements. If you're looking for Spiral Knights but actively developed, this isn't it, but I do think it'll be of interest to you. So a very quick primer if you've not come across it yet. Steambirds Alliance is a massively cooperative bullet hell shooter. You play as a bird pilot or one of their fox allies, flying around an open world with up to 59 other players at a time, fighting against the evil Cat Empire. There's 14 different classes to play, and more progression than you're ever likely to complete. It's frantic, fun, punishing, and rewarding in equal measure. So why do I think it would be of interest to Spiral Knights players? Number one, it's free to play. You can argue that there's hundreds of other free-to-play games out there too, and you'd be right, but I'm not saying it's the only reason, just that I know that most of the Spiral Knights audience is looking for a good game that requires minimal financial investment, so it's a good start. It also means you can try out the game to your heart's content and walk away for nothing if it's not your thing. 2. It's cooperative. I know there's a not insignificant part of the Spiral Knights community who does like PvP, and to that end I will admit that Steambirds Alliance doesn't actually have any PvP content, if that is your jam, but the honest truth is that Spiral Knights was conceived as a co-op game, and the overwhelming lion's share of its content is co-op. PvP was only ever an afterthought. I would wager the typical Spiral Knights player enjoys working together with a team to overcome challenges, and that is exactly what Steambirds Alliance is. 3. It's mechanically similar. Okay, that's the best way I can actually describe it. Spiral Knights is played from a top-down perspective, fighting enemies that require careful positioning, timing, and strategy to fight. And so is Steambirds Alliance. At a glance, you'd be forgiven for thinking they don't seem all that similar. Spiral Knights throws projectiles at you, sure, but it's a far cry from a bullet hell. But honestly, when you do get down to it, the gameplay feels familiar. It's faster, yeah, it's much more lethal, yeah, but it uses the same skills you've already developed. 4. It's stylistically similar. I don't actually know if this will be a big deal for everyone, but for me personally, I'm definitely drawn to a game's style. Steambirds Alliance has the same kind of Saturday morning cartoon aesthetic that drew me to Spiral Knights in the first place. Let's call it for children of all ages, so I can pretend I'm not playing a kid's game. Okay, now you know what it's got in common. I'll assume that if you're still watching, you must be at least slightly interested, so let's see where it differs, for better or for worse. 1. Monetization. Spiral Knights mostly sells cosmetics through an awful gacha, or loot box system. I say awful because I think all gacha mechanics are awful. They're predatory, addictive gambling mechanics which get away with it because it's just a video game, it's not real gambling. I could probably get another entire opinion piece just out of my thoughts on that subject alone, but suffice to say that I think they're bad. Of course, the players who don't buy in can trade in-game to get what they want from the gamblers, so it's not actually gating any content from the free players, which is nice. There's also a few convenience pieces like extra trinket or weapon slots, and there's some similarities because convenience is mainly what Steambirds Alliance is selling. You start out with hangar space for 2 ships, which are effectively your character slots, and a limited amount of storage. You can unlock a third hangar space and some extra storage as you level up, but it's always designed to feel just a little limiting so that you want to pay money to unlock more. It is actually a step up from launch, which I would have described as frustratingly limiting, but a quick glance at the Steam reviews will tell you that it doesn't really sit well with everybody. Personally, I do actually quite like the system, because you never actually really need it, and it doesn't confer any real edge over anyone else, but it is a nice to have if you have the disposable income. Steambirds Alliance also sells cosmetics, and some of the basic ones are earnable with the standard game's currency, but I estimate that you're genuinely looking at around 70 to 80 hours of gameplay just to unlock one new ship style. If you want to look different to anyone else, you're probably going to have to open your wallet. 2. Difficulty. Steambirds Alliance is punishing. It used to have permadeath, and thankfully it's not that punishing anymore, but that doesn't make it easy either. It really doesn't take much to get yourself shot down if you're reckless, and every time you crash, your gear degrades in quality. You can probably live with it after 1 crash, but you will notice a drop in performance after 2 or 3, and by 4, it's basically worthless and you'll need to look to repair or replace it. There is a catch there that endgame gear requires gear of equivalent quality to be sacrificed to repair it. Oh, you accidentally broke that awesome elemental sword that was a rare drop from a hard boss. Okay. Well, now you're going to need a second one in order to fix it. Ouch. So imagine you wiped while you were fighting Vanaduke, and now your Glacius will always do less damage unless you're willing to spend another 5-star piece of gear in order to fix it. Admittedly, I would argue that the gear in Steambirds Alliance is probably a bit easier to come by than crafting all the way through the crazy heat system in Spiral Knights. But I feel like the analogy gives you an idea of the scale of things here. You don't want to lose that good gear, right? Even without permadeath, you still want to be careful not to lose all your awesome gear to a bit of recklessness in a boss fight. 3. It's actively developed. We'll see where it goes, for sure, but the game's been out less than 3 months and already had one pretty major update. The developers are actively invested in and care about the future of the game. This is not in any way to belittle the work Grey Havens has done for Spiral Knights, but if we're honest, the game has only seen minor dribs and drabs of content over the last few years. I've often said that I think Spiral Knights is a hobby project for Grey Havens on the side of having a full-time career elsewhere, and I will still stand by that. I know a lot of old Spiral Knights players burned out a long time ago, like I did, and I think, or hope, many of them are still subbed to me, and they might be open to a recommendation. Steambirds Alliance is early in its life right now, and it feels really promising to me, but it also does have quite a small player base right now, and it's an indie team with limited marketing opportunities, so I kind of feel like showing it off to the old Spiral Knights crowd is the right way to go. I hope you give it a shot and it recaptures some of that spark. Links are obviously in the description below if that piqued your interest, and don't forget to leave a like if you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, I'm Maroka, and I'll see you next time.